Star's fading, but I linger on, dear, still craving your kiss.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. We have been having a glorious weather, as you might be able to detect from my attire. Well, we're going to be covering some rather taxing, but some otherwise more entertaining material today. So if you will bear with me, I am going to plunge in with what Julie Johnson says. Hello, Lady C. Can you please discuss what is appropriate to wear at funerals? I noticed the suit colours for Trump, Prince William, and Zelensky, again, no suit and no tie, at Pope Francis's funeral. Absolutely love your videos. Never miss. Thank you. Thank you for your work, time, and research that you put into it, watching from Melbourne, Australia. And let me just read out another one of the many on this subject, and then I'll answer both at once. Stephanie Green says, Lady C, on a lighter note, could you please correct the the ignoramuses who are criticizing President Trump and Prince William for wearing blue suits to the Holy Father's funeral. The protocol is dark suits for men and modest black dresses and mantillas for women. Navy blue is a dark color. There were loads of other blue suits worn by dignitaries, but the New York Times claimed Trump stood out like a blue thumb. Please set the record straight. Thank you. Well, the protocols are very, very clear. All ladies are supposed to wear mantillas and gloves when they are in a papal audience or at a papal funeral. The Vatican protocol, according to Il Messaggero, is men are to wear dark suits with a black tie and a black lapel button, and women should wear a long dress. It doesn't have to be floor length, but it should cover the knees at least, with a matching veil and gloves, and they are expected to wear minimal adornments. In fact, it is suggested that they wear one strand of pearls as the totality of their jewelry. And I'll make that point because practically no one of any significance in terms of the women was properly dressed, and many of the men weren't either. Now, I know because I have had a papal audience that they're really quite flexible about certain things, and they allow some latitude. For instance, I should have worn a black dress, and I wore a beige dress, but I wore a black cardigan, black mantilla, and black gloves. So I'll tell you who, aside from William, and who had on a black tie, incidentally. President Trump had on a blue suit and a blue tie, but former President Biden had on a blue tie. He had on a black suit, but a blue tie. Zelensky didn't even have on a jacket. although he did go the extra yard and wear a black something over a black underthing. And uh, Queen Sylvia of Sweden, she wore a brooch, which, I mean, nowadays, I suppose it's okay to wear a brooch, but really, at a papal funeral, you should be unadorned. But most of the women weren't. Melania Trump wore, and she was one of the most correctly dressed women. She wore, nevertheless, broke the rule. She wore a chain with a cross. So you sort of think she could get away with that. Giorgia Meloni, the Italian Prime Minister, didn't cover her head. Big no-no. Wore a trouser suit without gloves, but very plain and simple and asexual. So I suppose you could say, well, she's a prime minister, so she straddles the divide. As you can see, I'm bending over backwards. Lady Starmer, Keir Starmer's wife, wore a fascinator, not a mantilla. Brigitte Macron, well, her head seems to have been covered because I think she had on a wig. But a wig doesn't actually qualify as a head covering. A mantilla does. And she had on no gloves either. Queen Letizia of Spain had on a brooch, but no necklace, no gloves, but a mantilla. Jill Biden, as I said, had on no gloves, and also Jill Biden's suit was so heavily decorated with fancy jeweled buttons that it really negated. I mean, it really was a no-no. Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway, no gloves. Princess Charlene of Monaco, no gloves. Queen Mary of Denmark, earrings and a brooch. Queen Mathilde of the Belgians, a pearl choker and earrings and no gloves. Do you begin to get the picture that loads of people actually were not adhering very strictly to the dress code? Now, as I say, I've been received by the Pope, and I also broke the dress code. So you're sort of supposed to adhere to it. But as long as you are covered, as long as you are modest, as long as you are more or less in keeping with the mood of the moment, they do cut you some slack. So, of course, it's interesting. I haven't seen the New York Times, but it wouldn't surprise me that they'd have a go at Trump, but ignore the fact that Biden also broke the rules. And Jill Biden definitely broke the rules. But I'm pretty sure that not one of the cardinals really cared that much. I think Trump stood out because of where he was seated. And he's a very big man, and he was always going to stand out. But I think he could actually have worn a black suit and a black tie, but he chose not to, and I'm pretty sure the next Pope isn't going to condemn him to Hades for all eternity. So I hope that answers the question. Now we're going to get on to something rather more serious. Musique Freak says, some of these names. Hi, Lady C. Have you ever considered writing a book about Virginia Roberts? No. I actually have to say, though, I think if I could bear to write on such a distressing and often distasteful subject and painful, I think I would be able to do her family, especially her husband and children, as opposed to her birth family. But even I would be able to do all of them some justice. It is an extremely complex story, and it is a huge morality tale, and it is a genuine tragedy. And in my opinion, what makes it so tragic is that she had turned over a new leaf, and she was ensnared by Sharon Churcher of the Daily Mail, and I think it was the Mail on Sunday, but anyway, the Associated Newspapers. But I'll get to that in a moment. And the reality is, a part of the story would have to be about the tremendously destructive role that the press sometimes plays in the creation of narratives as they further their own commercial agendas and hop on their high horses with a little thought of the effect that it might have on the parties concerned. There is such a thing as responsible journalism, and there is such a thing as irresponsible journalism. And I happen to think that Virginia Giuffre's life is a true tragedy. And what could ever have possessed Sharon Churcher to think that once she ensnared Virginia Giuffre and made her return to a life that she had left behind by revisiting it and utilizing it for her enrichment, that it was going to profit Virginia Giuffre or her husband and her children. There were 3 young children involved. There was a loving, devoted husband involved. She had a good life. The story cannot be told without sticking very closely to the ethics and the morality involved and the underlying profundities which are absolutely crucial to not only understanding what happened, how it happened, and why it happened, but also the narratives that are being pushed at the moment by the press and by her birth family are all very self-serving, but they do not actually, in my opinion, endow her husband and her children with the respect that they deserve. The only thing that will ever set them free is the truth. The fact of the matter is, they should never have become aware of the truth in the first place. We can thank Sharon Churchill for that. She is the one who, by her own admission, sought out Virginia Giuffre and tempted her. And Lord's Prayer, for a very good reason, says, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." Sharon Churchill led her into temptation and did not deliver her from evil. She delivered her into evil, which she had left behind. I think the whole thing is a genuine tragedy, and you can depend on it. The Mail is only too aware of the part it has played in it. And yesterday's Mail, Sharon Churchill is there trying to gild the lily, to let herself off the hook. And in so doing, she is actually preventing Robert Giuffre and those 3 children from having the closure and the respect and to understand their feelings and their situation and how they dealt with this appalling situation that should never have arisen. So, would I want to write a book like that? I would find it extremely taxing. There are such moral issues involved. And also, I would not be condemning Virginia Giuffre the way she then was encouraged by the press for profit to condemn herself and to condemn those other girls who were equally deserving of some understanding and compassion. The whole thing is so layered, but I think unless people have a very firm handle on what a morality tale is and what constitutes a morality tale and what the morality of the situation is, they shoot off in all sorts of destructive directions. That's my take. Cartier says, Lady C, I was saddened to learn of Virginia Giuffre's death by the S word, since this is YouTube. Yes, it's always regrettable when somebody is responsible for removing himself or herself from this earth. I mean, I am an ambassador of SOS, silence of that word. And indeed, on Thursday, I am going to be at Warwick Castle with SOS silence of that word as we get together to celebrate the lives of those who have died by that means, because it creates a tremendous amount of guilt, pain, hostility, perplexity that lasts a lifetime. It leaves lifelong wounds. And people are treating the Virginia Giuffre situation as if it's just a story. What about her husband and her 3 children? Anyway, let me continue. I know you have been skeptical of her claims, especially more recently, after the way she exaggerated her car accident and injuries on Instagram. Could it be the way she was presenting her story had become convoluted and distorted as a result of her abuse? Has your view of her claims changed in any way? I appreciate this being a sensitive topic, but surely there is much to be learnt from it. Thank you so much. There is a lot to be learned from it. And the first thing to be learned from it is that when somebody has left a life of decadence and destruction behind, the press doesn't go and induce them to tell their story. And oh, you can make a whole load of money. Let's buy the picture for, well, I forget what it was, something like 40 or 60,000 pounds. And let's tell your story. And you can make a whole load of money, And why don't we write a book together? Oh, that's going to make you a whole load of money. And that's going to make me a whole load of money as well. Sorry. There are some ways of making money that are, in my opinion, unacceptable. And that was one of them. And I tell you, Sharon Churcher, and I'm going to quote her, because if you know the reality of what happened, you know to what extent that woman is responsible for having triggered the whole disaster after this girl had left behind a life that she was wise enough in her early 20s or late teens. I think she was 41, so I think she might have been 19, and she was wise enough to understand Robert Giuffre and the love they shared was going to give her an opportunity to have a good, clean life, and she took it. And she was tracked down. But let me quote Sharon Churcher. When Virginia Giuffre first produced the dog-eared photograph from an envelope, she had little idea of the international furore to come, that the picture would help unmask a billionaire sex predator and force a prince of the realm from public life, or that she would be driven to take her own life amid the shadows of a scandal she feared would drag her down forever. Now, that's absolutely true, except what Sharon Churcher hasn't told you is that she is the one who not only encouraged Virginia Giuffre, but tempted her with money and then with promises of, and Virginia Giuffre fell for the whole temptation. Let's stick at that. And this, again, is what Sharon Churcher says. She doesn't realize the full extent of how she's hanging herself with every word she has written. Virginia had only kept the now notorious snap as a memento of what she still half believed were enviable years as a human sex toy. Virginia Giuffre, listen to what she has just said. Quote, "I'm not sure that I should be showing this to you," she said when we met in 2011. "He's a British prince. I'm telling you things even my husband didn't know." Right in front of her husband. Then people are surprised that ultimately the marriage breaks up, her family breaks up. And it has ended in tragedy the way it has. Because ultimately, Robert Giuffre married Virginia Roberts, thinking she was apples, and thanks to Sharon Churcher and the encouragement thereafter, he discovered that she wasn't only oranges, that she was able to concoct a real salad of sensationalism and things that any man and any child would be repelled by. I'm sorry. What the consequences, and that this woman didn't realize that what she was doing. Sorry, just if anybody said to me, but let me quote her when she said, "Indeed, the expression on Robert's face changed from shock." You see, he didn't know she had been wise enough to not show him the true defilement, which not only had she endured, but that she had colluded in. And all of this was now going to come out, and did ultimately come out. How is that going to be reconciled with a good, happy family life? Anyway, Robert's face changed from shock to rage as she detailed how Maxwell assigned her a bedroom in her Belgravia townhouse and told her, "You're going to dance with a prince tonight." Then she continues, she was bombarded by accusations that she was a gold-digging pro. We won't conclude the rest of the words since this is YouTube. Who betrayed her family when she gave the Mail on Sunday permission to reproduce the photo in February 2011. What Sharon Churchill isn't telling you is that was just the start. Sharon Churchill went after her. Go, give more, let's develop this. We can write a book out of this. I can make you a whole load of money. And did. And as the stories got more fanciful, can you imagine how the man whose face changed from shock to rage was going to feel? This was a tragedy waiting to happen. And I am sorry, Sharon Churchill bears a share of responsibility for it. That's my opinion. Not every story needs to be told. She says, the emotional burden was enormous. I'm pretty damn sure she realized it even at the time. But she was going to make a name for herself. They were going to write a book together, blah, blah, blah. Virginia buried her face in her hands as she told me she was still mortified by memories of the SEXUL encounters for which she was paid by the hour. So there is Virginia Giuffre confessing in front of her poor husband, who doesn't know the half of it, that not only was she a professional being paid by the hour, but that she was being paid handsomely by the hour. The implication is that up to then, she had led him to believe she was a naughty girl slightly, and she'd made a whole load of money, but that was in the past. How was she going to reconcile that? And how was he and how were their children ultimately going to live with that? Because she was going to become a champion for the oppressed when it would emerge, as it did, that Virginia Giuffre was one of the chief oppressors of all time. She is the one who not only sold herself down the river for quite significant sums of money, but that she induced other girls to do it. All of this came out as I said the other day, in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. How is a man who's supposed to love a woman and their 3 children supposed to live with all of this? And now the press is trying to make out that she was somehow a champion, and that she and her birth family, which also plays a not insignificant part in all of this. I'm not blaming them, but I have to tell you, they know as well as I do that all of this started when Virginia Roberts was about 11 or 12, and she accused a close member of the family group of interfering with her. One parent didn't believe it, the other believed it. They separated. It nearly broke up their marriage. She went and lived with her aunt. When she came back, she then proceeded to run away. She was on drugs, and Sharon Churcher actually touches upon the fact that she was still taking drugs when Sharon Churcher saw her. But her birth family is now trying to pretend that she was some champion. Well, don't they all realize that they're excusing their guilt, but they are heaping guilt upon her husband and her children, who clearly wanted a healthier life and didn't want to live with all of this decadence, and didn't want to live with the fact that the husband knows and the children know that his wife and their mother had such a deeply unsavory life, and having concealed it from him and from them. Once money is involved, it's out in the public, she's earning significant sums of money, and they are supposed to regard this as compensation for the humiliation, for the disrespect, for the huge reconciliation that they thereafter have to do and will have to continue to do for the rest of their lives. I mean, the whole thing is so appalling, I cannot tell you. According to Sharon Churcher, I hoped her ordeal had finally ended when Andrew agreed to pay her a settlement reported by the Mail to be £12 million in February 2022, although the true figure might well be lower. She knows it's much lower. I know it's much lower. We all know it's much lower. Why is the mainstream media going with this lie? Another lie. I mean, they have no respect for any of the human beings involved. Then she says, and so the strain that her revelations put on her relationship with Robert was probably inevitable. Remember, this is the woman who tracks down this girl, happily married with 3 children, leading a very constructive life in the middle of nowhere, relatively speaking, to the United Kingdom or the United States, and induces her with huge sums of money, which they pay her, and encourages her to write her memoirs. And there are, in the various court proceedings, passages where there are admissions made that, oh, you need, no, you don't remember him. Oh, you got to remember him. I think that was Alan Dershowitz. You got to remember him. You know, he's a real sleazebag. Let's have a go at him, was the message. You need to remember him. I mean, sorry, it's unbelievable. What Churcher doesn't say is that, oh, but let me continue, because she said that Ghislaine Maxwell sang, she quotes Virginia saying, Ghislaine sent me to a dentist to have my teeth whitened, and I went for waxes. And Churchill has to know, as I know, that they got along very well. And let me quote what she says first, and then I'll make the point. I knew I had to oblige every one of his whims. Nothing unique about that. Very rich men expect their whims to be accommodated. And if you don't, sometimes they respect it, other times it's the possibility of an exit. But she was conscionable and conscious enough to understand, she being Virginia Giuffre, while she was with Epstein, that if she played ball, she would profit greatly, and she did. And she said, I knew I had to oblige every one of his whims. I knew he was someone of great knowledge, great power, and influence. And I knew that he had to be well respected. I felt I couldn't deny him. She also made the point that he flew her all around the world in his private plane. She, of her own free will, went. She's an adult. She's going. She's encouraging girls. She's getting girls for him. Let's not forget that she was in Thailand to pick up a girl for him and take the girl back. All of this came out in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And she admitted that he used to pay for her accommodation. He bought her a car. He used to give her thousands just for the sake of giving them. And she turned her back on all of that when she realized that she could have love with a good man. And she is tracked down by the Mail and by Sharon Churchill and encouraged with financial inducement. So you can even say she's being bribed. She's certainly being tempted to violate not only her privacy, but revisit the filth of her past. And that's not going to have a detrimental effect upon her life. I mean, the lack of responsibility is enough to make anybody choke. And she ends up by making the point, and this is the crux of the matter. She says that as for Prince Andrew, her, meaning Virginia Giuffre's handwritten manuscript, which she was working on, she being Sharon Churchill, with Virginia Giuffre, concludes that she blamed only one person for allowing Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine to turn her into a little disposable play toy for, and the person was Virginia herself. Then she concludes with the reason why this has ended in disaster, a heartbreakingly false verdict she has now taken to her grave. No, Sharon Churchill, if you had any concept of morality, first of all, you would, if once you tracked her down, you wouldn't have induced her the way you did to violate her privacy and reveal things that were best left unsaid, because it was obviously going to destroy her life. And she understood enough to have left it all behind. And you're saying because she was sensible enough and mature enough at the age of 19 to leave the filth behind, that is and she understood the part she had played in it, because she was very, very frank about the fact that she loved the lure of all the money and the luxury. She had done it by her own account, purely for the money and the luxury, and she loved it. She was absolutely clear about the fact. It's there in black and white for anybody to read. All of this, incidentally, has been the product and the cause of much legal action. So a lot of this is in court papers, incidentally. So it's not as if to say it's not out there and people can't avail themselves of it if they want to. And certainly the press ought to know. Well, this is a girl who should be commended for having turned her back on decadence. And to me, it is a great tragedy that she was then induced to not only violate her privacy and ruin her life and the lives of many other people in the process, to make money, because it was done for money and attention. And she was promised not only money, but that she would be able to be feted as a heroine, except her husband and children cannot have regarded her as a heroine, because once they knew what they knew, they were going to have to reconcile it with the reality of what it was. And this was going to destroy her life and their lives and their family. And unless they are given the respect and sympathy and compassion and comprehension that they deserve, they will continue to be burdened by false narratives. Virginia Giuffre, at 19, understood the reality, and she should be commended for that. She should also deserve some compassion for having been tempted away from the true path: decency, family life, proper love, not the false gods of money and attention and supposed approbation from people who neither know nor care about you. She had a full understanding, and she took the right course of action, and she was derailed from it by the pursuit of a journalist and the pursuit of a journalist with a checkbook and the promise that, oh, we're going to get great stories out of this. Let me rub my hands. Oh, and also, you're going to be respected but not by the people who mattered, not by the people who ultimately were the core of her life, not by the people, and not also by herself, because you cannot have made the decision she made at 19, and she was honest to Sharon Churchill. She loved the whole thing. She wasn't a prissy, moralistic victim. She was somebody who admitted clearly she'd done it And that was honest, and that deserved respect. Well, she knew what she was really about, and then she's cast in the role where she's supposed to be condemning herself, and does, because she knows the reality. She knew the reality at 19. I think the whole thing is such a frightening saga, and the press have done it purely to have stories. And I have to tell you, I do not think that destroying young people's lives for a story, because remember, they destroyed mine as well. So I know what I'm talking about. I was 25. Virginia Giuffre in 2011 would have been late 20s. So she was still young too, with a husband and 3 children and a good life. I'm not saying that Virginia Giuffre didn't play a part in it. She succumbed to temptation, but she did not seek out the temptation. It sought her out. I think the whole thing is so appalling, I can't tell you. That is a story that, to be given justice, needs to be presented in its awful reality, as the morality tale it is, not dressed up as something it's not. And if I wrote the story, I would not be condemning the young Virginia Giuffre when she was Roberts for succumbing to greed and succumbing to the lure of, well, greed and luxury. I wouldn't be condemning her. I would be. But of course, what the press has done and what the moralists do, the pseudo-moralists, because they're not really moral, is they have allowed her to condemn herself and all of those girls that she induced to do the same thing. I mean, talk about creating a guilt trip and just taking an egg beater into someone's brain and scrambling it. Are they then surprised that she ends up where she has ended up? They play a part in it, a large part in it. That's my take. And they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones, because others have jumped on the bandwagon, including David Boies, Clinton's lawyer. Queen's Corgi says, Dear Lady C, how will Prince Andrew now clear his name? I don't see how he will, but there we go. When the whole faux accident plus claim of 4 days to live drama hit, I thought finally he can start clearing his name. But then she got whacked by you-know-who. She once posted that she would never commit the word, and to question if that occurred. Less than 60 days ago, she posted it was a higher calling to fight to expose the truth about the Epstein list until her last breath. I feel so sorry for Prince Andrew, as it was a total stitch-up. Well, I think in fact, I know it was a total stitch-up. One of the leading lawyers in the world told me it was a stitch-up, and how it was a stitch-up. He sat right on that sofa, and I sat over there on that other sofa, and he told me chapter and verse, and I did a whole episode on it some time ago. Well, I do not necessarily. I know an awful lot of people are saying she got whacked and that she has been subject to an arkansiding the way Epstein was. I'm not sure that there is enough basis for, there is a basis for the suspicion, but I do not think that there is actually any indication of anything but the fact that her life had imploded. It was inevitable it was going to implode as the children got older, as the money ran out. She was going to be stuck with the consequences of her actions, the actions which Sharon Churcher had set her on that path of. And I think that's what happened. I'm not saying other people haven't been arkansided, and I certainly think there is plenty of room for doubt that the tale that was told about Jeffrey Epstein's conclusion, let's put it like that, actually it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's a little bit too convenient. But Virginia Giuffre, I'm sorry, I think she is the one who did it, and I can understand why she did it, and I have compassion for her for having done it. It was inevitable. It was always going to end badly, always. There was no way it could not end badly. And you see, Virginia Giuffre, to give her her due, had enough sense and enough connection to reality and enough wisdom to have understood at 19 that there were choices in life to make, and she made the right one. Then she made the wrong one when she was in her late 20s. That's what's happened. And she's paid the price for it. But let's not let anybody else off the hook that was involved. Ophelia says, Lady C, I hope you now have some sympathy for Virginia. I feel like some people were dealt a bad hand from birth. That family of hers, she never stood a chance. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. I don't agree with that. Her family was not anywhere near as appalling as some people have been trying to make out. Nor were they as remiss. I don't agree with that at all. I have some sympathy for her. I've always had some sympathy for her. I've simply not had sympathy for her claims that were going to destroy the lives of other people when I knew that those claims were unjust. But that doesn't mean I didn't have sympathy for her. And some people get dealt a bad hand from birth. Sweetie pie, you're talking to somebody who was born a freak, as my father used to put it. Come on. It's up to you, no matter what hand you were dealt with, to make the best of your life. And she had been doing it until she was induced by the temptations, the lure of filthy lucre, the glamour of wealth, being a celebrity. What a tragedy. Old Rose Hip says, Harry and Meghan were talking about the dangers of social media and then turn around and put their own children on social media for clicks. Oh, Harry's son and daughter are being ruthlessly exploited for clicks, but it's not by Harry, it's by Meghan. Let's be clear about who's doing it. And quite frankly, the brazenness with which she does it. Oh, I'm leading this perfectly wonderful and marvelous life. Everybody should envy me. Look at me. I'm so beautiful. I'm so beautifully dressed. I've got beautiful children. And we have a beautiful life and beautiful flowers and beautiful this and beautiful that. And don't you just envy me, you pure schlumps. Make sure you buy my overpriced jam and honey. I mean, what do you think? Do you think you're there for anything except to admire me? I'm an exploiter. We're seen to be surrounded by exploiters. At least that's my take on it. Lexi Mike says, or Mish, thank you, Lady C, for speaking on this. I'm pretty sure you won't see this before today's show goes up, but I think this would be hard to catch if you weren't the child of a narcissist. In the video of Lily by the Pond, Migraine says, what do you think, Lily? Then Lily says, I already told you, Mommy, they're beautiful. A lot of people would just chalk that up to them having to do a lot of takes. However, I couldn't count the number of times my mom and I would be watching TV and she would ask me about someone on the TV. Doesn't her hair look gorgeous that way? Even if I thought it looked hideous, I would have to agree with her, because if I didn't, I would get chastised. Although, even if I agreed with her, she would ask me a couple more times. It was so freeing when I finally started asking her, do you really want to know what I think? She knows now not to ask me if she wants the truth. Love you and the fur babies. Thought you might like the observation. I love it. It actually brings back memories of my mother. Not that my mother ever asked us to agree with her, because she simply expected everybody to agree with her. But if you dared to disagree with her, the looks she would shoot you. You knew not to disagree with her. Because narcissists train their children to be echo chambers. There is a reason why a narcissist is named after Narcissus. And the tale of Narcissus is Narcissus and Echo. It's not just Narcissus. It's Narcissus and Echo. And you need to echo what the narcissist is saying. Otherwise, you have failed in your function. And incidentally, I checked what Lily said. And she didn't say, I already told you, Mommy. She said, I said it's beautiful. So that's the same meaning, because she's reminding her mother, I'm a good girl, Mummy. You see, I've agreed with you, and I'm agreeing with you again. I mean, that plus the Archie interaction of not too long ago shows that Meghan has those children in a stranglehold. She has a vice on their heads. And she is going to make absolutely sure that those children are going to do what my mother Gloria used to do. And what all narcissists do. Very well spotted. Thank you very much for that. It is much appreciated. And we will end on that note, because I don't want this to be unnecessarily long. I don't want to burden you with too lengthy an episode. So thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. I hope you understand how layered and nuanced and truly awful that whole situation is. And there is a reason why they say the truth will set you free. And as far as I'm concerned, the main responsibility that anybody should have is to her husband and children, not her parents and her siblings, or her aunt, or her, if they're still alive, grandparents, etc. It's her husband and children, especially her children. I hope that they have inherited enough of her realism, which she clearly demonstrated at 19 she possessed, to make the right choice and not go down the path that she was thereafter led by Sharon Churcher and all of those, in my view, arch hypocrites who were busy feathering their nest, using her to enhance their agendas, whatever those agendas were, and to her ultimate detriment. When you have had a very troubled life, the only thing that preserves you, the only thing that is going to make you function to the best of your ability is to absolutely dispassionately understand the realities involved and what their consequences will be, and don't buy the lie. And on that note, I say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and a bientôt. Bye-bye.